Hey everyone, today I want to present the changes I'd like to see made to every killer in Dead by Daylight. Let's get into it. Trapper to me is honestly in a great spot as he's been slowly buffed over the years. However, a few of his add-ons becoming base kits certainly wouldn't hurt. Base kit Iridescent Stone would largely solve his setup and early game pressure problem. I'd also just like sort of a passive buff where his traps just maybe vaguely adjust to the environment of the map. If you're on Eerie, say, you get sort of a yellowy coloured trap. If you're on Borgo, it's more of a darker, dirtier colour, and so on. It doesn't have to be completely map tinted, but just a slight push in that direction. So sort of making the tar bottle base kit too. Wraith, the first thing I'd like honestly is to remove his loud breathing sound that exposes him far too easily. He already has to ring his bell and give away his position, so the breathing feels a bit excessive to me. I'd also love to see some extra buffs whilst he's cloaked, like better tracking with bright blood pools, and maybe even a built-in Strider type effect, sort of heightened senses when he's cloaked. Billy is basically fine in my eyes when it comes to his core power. I do think, however, some add-on reworks would be nice. There's a bunch of recovery add-ons that are just bad and sort of boring. Maybe change those. I also think he should have a Wesker radius too at 40 meters. I think that'd be cool for him. Nurse, I'm just going to suggest a full-on rework, which is to make one of her current meme add-ons base kit. Spasmodic Breath makes it so when you land a blink attack, you switch to being a 4.6 meters per second killer for 60 seconds, but are unable to blink. I think this makes her quite fair, but still retains her power. She'd honestly still be like top 5 easily. Alternately make Matchbox her base, as again she's still really powerful with just the one blink, but also slightly faster at 4.4 meters per second. But I think it's infinitely more interesting this way and fair than her current version. Huntress I think is literally fine. I have nothing to suggest for her. I know lots of people think she was overbuffed before, but honestly I think she's fine. Rework a few add-ons maybe. Myers, I'd love to see his power change so that he doesn't just lose his power once he's stalked so much. I think a cool mechanic would be that once he's fully stalked someone, he can mori them. This working in a gameplay and lore sense. I would say the amount available to stalk though would probably have to be raised. Myers add-ons are silly and busted, but I think due to it being Myers, it's fine. I also like the idea I had from the original change video, which was to make the survivor who contributed the most stalk to any tier 3 scream, therefore making them more of a target than those who didn't. Otherwise I'm pretty happy with Myers. Hag is just sort of boring at the moment and I'm not too sure how to remedy it. Personally, I don't like that you can scratch her traps out. I preferred to when they had the counterplay with flashlights, so that would be a nice revert I think. I think at the moment she struggles a lot with her setup times and retaining that web of traps, so maybe she should have some kind of passive trap regeneration where traps come back after being deactivated for a while. That's probably not going to be a popular take, but I think maybe she really needs something like this now. Doctor, I just want more hallucinations. Make it so when he shocks you, you imagine fake hexes, fake screams in the distance, fake teammates, and so on. All of these things can add nice effects to different add-ons too. Bubba is also pretty fine I think. He's meant to be simple, so I think leave him that way. An add-on rework would be nice though, because he currently has really bad and just boring add-ons, super dull effects. Give him some fun ones, even if they're more memey. Freddy, just merge the abilities, give him snares and fake pallets, and maybe even chuck in something extra too so he just has more to play around with, without restriction. Buff his add-ons a bit too. I think his add-ons are interesting enough, they're just mostly weak. For Pig, I'd like to see a faster crouch speed, maybe even as high as 3.8 meters per second. Quite a lot, but at the moment I think she loses far too much pressure by crouching. This makes her crouch the same as Ghostface's. I do also like the idea of her ambush causing an insta-down when landed, but I sort of go back and forth on liking that idea. Clown, weirdly, despite my dislike for him, I think is actually perfectly fine. His power is fine, his add-ons are pretty solid and varied, no complaints, I think, aside his existence. Spirit, I think the main issue with her is her inaccessibility for those who are hard of hearing. I would say she could benefit from some kind of visual terror radius equivalent indicator for her power to make it fairer to both play and face her. I also think she could use some add-on nerfs. Things like the Cherry Blossom are just a bit much. Even after all her nerfs, she's still strong in an annoying way, so just nerf this stuff, the annoying stuff. Legion I'd like to see have a shorter mend time. I really hate mending, and one reason I dislike Legion is the ones who play specifically to make you mend repeatedly and do nothing else. So just a mend nerf. Remove the add-ons that can make mend even longer. They're pretty solid otherwise since their rework. I actually think too you could buff their speed up by just a bit, maybe by an extra 0.2 meters per second per hit. Maybe that's too much, I don't know. Plague, I still like the idea I had before where infected objects get nerfed in some way to give more reason to infect objects rather than survivors directly. For example, an infected pallet stuns for less, or can be broken faster, or an infected gen can have a small debuff to repair speed. Stuff like that I think could be nice. I'd also like if object infection just didn't go away. I think if you do a full beam of vomit onto a generator, say, it should just stay infected. A hot take maybe. Ghostface. Now for Ghosty I want to suggest something a little wild, which is to just remove the 40 meter stalk distance and make it uncapped or infinite. I think Ghosty should be rewarded for having creative angles and making use of the full map potential, so he should be able to stalk from anywhere if he has line of sight. This also gives him a bit more map pressure. I also want to suggest a sort of secondary mode for him, a second stalk where instead of exposing you can instead reveal with an aura. So if you watch someone long enough you can then track them without them knowing for say 60 seconds. Is that too much? I just think there's times when I wish I could have a different kind of stalk when they don't notice me, something that can benefit me in a different way aside exposing them. Demogorgon is fine as well, buff its add-ons, they're all largely quite bad. Also as a sort of side note that's not entirely relevant to just Demogorgon, get rid of the invisible walls on all of the maps. They're annoying, let me leap across the map and get cool hits. Only I want to suggest a sort of fire-up mechanic, where the longer he remains without blood, he gets ever so slightly faster at different things, like pallet breaking, vaulting, and stuff like that. This way he gets a bit of extra help if he can't get those hits for blood. It could be a scaling thing of every 30 seconds, say, without gaining his power, he gets a 2.5% buff or something to these things. And also rework his add-ons, some are boring and some are bad. Deathslinger needs an add-on rework. I think he's fine aside that. I've always wanted a slightly longer reaching chain shot, but that's not a big deal. Maybe instead of 18 meters, it's more like 24 meters, maybe 28 meters, okay moving on. Pyramid Head I think is fine aside his slightly janky feeling animations and his terrible add-ons, so altering those and a rework to his add-ons would be incredible. Also I know it was really OP when they tested it on the PTB, but I thought the idea of applying Condemned with ranged attacks was really great. But I'm a Pyramid Head enjoyer, so I'm likely biased in wanting him high up the tier list. Blight is another character I think is in a perfectly fine spot. Most of his very strong add-ons are quite fair now, and I think it's fine that he's strong. He's strong in a fun way. I sort of wish he was the strongest in the game. Nerf Nurse, make him the top dog. Twins I'm also content with. I think the update they got recently made them solid. I don't think it's too likely they're going to be revisited again soon, so I'm personally happy with what they've already done. Trickster I really like actually in many ways. I think add-ons especially are really unique and interesting. I don't however think his power plays the best, and despite it getting some cleanups, it feels sort of bad still to use. I'm still of the opinion that main event just shouldn't have a timer. Just make it an option to be used at any time, but give it a longer charge time. I also like the idea that the more hits you get in main event, the longer it lasts. Therefore it's sort of your crowd control tool, and your base knives are more for individual chases and longer range and accuracy. Nemesis is just simple fun. He's a simple guy, but he does the job, doesn't he? I'd like to see a rework to his add-ons. They're largely just not the best, although there's some interesting ones in there. None are that powerful. His zombies do need a bit of direction too. Some kind of set pathing maybe, or something to make them a bit more useful or consistent. Maybe let us command them in some form. Pinhead I think is okay. I do wish when teleporting, the spawn point you arrive at was a bit more consistent. Sometimes you just appear and you have no idea where the person is who summoned you. Artist I think is fine as well. She could maybe have a few add-ons looked at some point, as some are sort of terrible, but aside that maybe just something funny like making her unable to disturb crows could be a fun little passive ability. I also think it should take ever so slightly longer to repel the crows, just for a better chance at long shots, and to encourage players to go for them. Sadako is tough, but I think an add-on rework would do do her wonders. Then maybe lower her staticky sounds too. Sometimes she's a bit too obvious when approaching. I think it would be nice if she could stealth a bit more when demanifested. Dredge just needs a buff in the way of maps themselves. Some maps are still just like empty in certain areas, there just aren't any lockers in certain parts of the map. That sucks, that shouldn't happen either. I do feel like Nightfall should be a bit brighter for survivors too. Maybe I'm just pathetic and need to adjust, but the current Nightfall is just way too dark for me. I can't see anything if I have any form of light coming into my room. An add-on rework would be great too. I'd honestly love as well if you could even afflict smaller Nightfall instances in some way. Maybe if you teleport close by to someone, they get shrouded in an area of fog and they have to run, say, 24 meters to leave. I think that'd be so cool and super scary. So rather than Dredge just like popping out the locker, when it pops out, everything around you goes dark, and you have to run a short distance to find the light again. Wesker is fine, I think. He's well made, I don't really have any ideas for him. I think it'd be nice if when you group up, you can just double spray each other together, sort of like in the games, you can use the first aid sprays to just heal both of you. So maybe that, but with cleansing Ouroboros. I'd also love more voice lines. We have loads, I know, but they're just so good. The voice actor did so well. Knight is going to be getting a dial wheel thing very soon, which is basically what I would have requested prior to him getting one. That's a nice change. I do think his add-ons need some reshifting, as basically all the good ones are common or uncommon. I'd also like if specifically the assassin, the fast-moving one that doesn't deep wound, had something a little more unique to do. He does have unique stuff, but something a bit more visibly unique, like the Carnifex's instant breaks or the Jailer's deep wound application. Maybe a slight buff to his speed and some kind of visual haste effect to distinguish him more. Skull Merchant, I'm going to be bold and say she's fine. I think she's had plenty of time put into her already, and I'd much rather any more be given to other characters at this point. She's okay now. Not perfect by any means, but she's fine. People are starting to learn this version of her, which is great, and I think she needs to stay as this version for a while because of that. Singularity is another one getting some buffs I would have requested had he not. He seems like he's in a better spot for sure after them. My main hopes are that his collision issues get fixed, where there's times where you can see someone but you can't scan them, and stuff like that. And an EMP nerf. They are too strong at the moment. Xenomorph, I don't like the tail still. I think it needs some sort of charge up, maybe a distance nerf, or just something. It feels too strong still, and so many times I get hit when I feel like I shouldn't. Otherwise, my issues with Xeno are largely down to it just not being my favorite character. I'm just not a fan of the power, and that's okay. I think it's fine aside the tail. Chucky is tough. I feel like he's sort of okay though. Nothing really stands out as an issue with him. I would like his ability to last a bit longer. It feels like you always just fall short of the amount you need with his power, at least I find. Unknown I also think is fine. I do think one change is making direct hits with the UVX cause damage, because it feels really bad when you're really accurate but you sort of get punished by not afflicting them with the UVX and its splash. I guess on a different note too, it'd be cool to see more hallucinations, maybe some voices calling out to you and distorting your reality a bit more, especially when you're affected by the UVX. You're just sitting on a gen and then suddenly, have you seen my dog? You know? Vecna I think is basically fine. Yeah, disappointing ending, I'm sorry, but I think he's literally just fine. I think he's okay. Alright, well that's gonna do it. Please do drop your thoughts too down below. These are just my silly ideas. I'd love to hear all of your input too. Thanks for watching and goodbye.